Welcome to Dying to Tell You, the Caring Perspective. And I have, let me check my notes. This is Aaron Metcalf. Aaron.
Hello, Cody.
Aaron and I met in undergraduate college.
Over a quarter of a century ago. I was doing the math. I was like, when's the last time?
Yeah, when did we actually see each other last?
I mean,
Probably
I graduated
25 years.
2006 and left
Oh, yeah,
2006. So you were probably out in 2004?
Yeah.
Because you're quite a bit older than me.
I don't think that's the case.
No.
I think you just did more schooling than I did.
You're quite a bit older.
When were you born?
78.
I was born in 79, brother.
Well, you look.
Yeah, so Aaron and I met in undergraduate college at Abilene Christian University in Abilene, Texas. Mm-hmm. And I'll let Aaron tell you a little bit about himself and kind of how he got where he is. But I'm really excited to have you on the podcast, mainly because we haven't really talked in quite some time.
Yeah.
But normally, Dying to Tell You, Aaron, but for people who are listening, Dying to Tell You is a podcast where I interview people who are coming to the end of their life. I'm a palliative care chaplain, and I have these conversations a lot. And this caring perspective is an opportunity for some of my friends, some of my colleagues, some strangers that I've met to tell a story about an end-of-life encounter that really has changed them, changed their life, changed the way that they practice, because I think Aaron will agree that the people that we work with teach us a lot.
Oh, yeah.
The work that we do is really the best thing about it, I think, is learning how to be better, how to be a better chaplain, how to be a better person, really. So, yeah, Aaron, why don't you tell the people where you're from and how you got where you are?
Well, Cody, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I have known you for a long time. We've had somewhat similar career trajectories, though we don't communicate a lot. I always think of you fondly and often, and you've been helpful to me, especially over the last 8 years as I kind of discerned new work and kind of stepped into it. I listened to your last episode of this podcast where the physician opened by saying, he was intimidated to talk to you and be on the podcast. It's important to me that I'm not intimidated to talk to you, because
Good.
I do remember in a world before us watching Survivor every Thursday night together.
Oh, yeah.
And once you've seen a grown man tear up at Jeff Probst, you are no longer intimidated by that.
For sure.
By that person.
We also watched the finale of Friends together. Do you remember that?
No, we did?
Yeah,
that's
you
great.
and Shalane came over.
Yeah, you guys were dorm parents at
Yeah.
Oh, I do remember that. That's
That
so
was fun.
funny. But we have had similar career trajectories. I worked in churches for 19 years out of college, and was kind of often drawn to in my work the more intense situations. Always enjoyed my time in hospitals. Always enjoyed kind of being there for people in their more difficult moments or challenging situations. I kind of came to chaplaincy through a strange avenue. Our denomination that we both came from, Cody, didn't really have many chaplains, or I didn't have a lot of context for it. So I always wondered, like, what the heck do these people do? It seemed kind of weird.
Right.
It seems like a strange kind of environment. I never really was exposed to one until my wife had a pretty major health emergency about 5 years ago this May, almost died. And I encountered a chaplain in that moment at a local hospital. And the way she was with me in this moment of void where I couldn't even figure out, how to open doors, literally. I was in such a state of trauma and shock. And she just oriented me to what was happening and normalized it in a non-anxious way. I just thought that's what I want to do with my life. And so went to CPE to become a chaplain, and now I work at a Trauma One hospital in Portland, Oregon. And I spend a lot of my time in the ICU units dealing with a lot of end of life situations. And I think it makes sense to you, Cody, but I just love it. It's a weird thing to
Yeah.
say, but I'm very
It's
inspired by my work and challenged by it.
Yeah, it's so yeah. What a gift! First of all, what a gift for anybody to be able to say they like their work. But the work that we do, I didn't realize how much time you spend in the ICU, but I spend a good portion of my time in the ICU as well. And as you described, I listened to your podcast and I listened to your episode of your podcast where you
No,
talked
no,
about.
really, I'm fine.
Yeah.
www.noreallyimfine.com. Yeah. Now I can
We'll
go.
get to that. We need to cut that out, Chris. We're not gonna. So I listened to that episode, and I think just reflecting on my own career and my own life, so much of what I appreciate about getting to do the work that we do is that I get to kind of revel in this deeply held value of hospitality. And to me, that really is at the core of what you and I are doing, especially in the ICU, is that these people they show up, everybody's speaking a different language. They're in a new place with new machines and new people, and it is nothing but disorienting. And to be able to be there and hopefully make it just a little bit more tolerable, help people understand what's happening, be that non-anxious presence, kind of bring the emotion of the situation down a little bit. Yeah, that's just I love it.
Thanks, Cody. Thank you.
You want to tell me a story?
Yeah. As I mentioned, I work at a Trauma One hospital, and I spend most of my time every week in various ICU units. One of those is our neurotrauma ICU unit, where we get really acute cases. And this story happened a couple of months ago at kind of a time in my career where I was experiencing quite a bit of kind of moral distress around death in the hospital, in particular around people dying in very suboptimal ways that they would want to die. My line is, I've never met anybody that's like, I hope I die hooked up to a bunch of machines with strangers coming in and checking on me every now and then in a sterile room. It's just not anybody's desire to die like that. And many people don't have that death experience, but a lot do. And I see like 100% in my hospital of the people that do die that way. So I was experiencing some moral distress around that. So was the unit that I work on. Our ICUs have just been overwhelmed. It's been a bad flu season, and flu mixes with pneumonia in difficult ways, and we have a lot of death. And so this case came after a weekend where there had been a lot of death. This is a patient who had been found down at home during a wellness check. She had experienced a devastating stroke that left her with a brain injury that was going to be non-survivable, and in fact had experienced what we would call death by neurological criteria, or I think she was actually just getting really, really close to that, but she was at the end. This was a person who came from a family with an indigenous person's background. She was actually a tribal leader at a local indigenous person's tribe not far away from our city. A person who had spent almost her entire life outdoors, had actually experienced houselessness and kind of enjoyed that lifestyle. Mm-hmm. She was a really vibrant person in her community. She had recently made a bunch of health changes and lost weight, and was kind of an inspirational person to them. So when I came into the situation on a Monday morning, the family was in deep distress around the fact that she was going to die, and especially that she was going to die in the hospital, in a hospital room. It was important to them that they have a smudging ceremony where they burn sage with an eagle feather. It was important to them that they would have chanting, and it was also very important to them that she would be able to die outside. It's not something that we're able to do. very often, but the family was asking, and I thought, well, why not just ask and figure out what's up? No harm in asking. So I checked with the charge nurse and the bedside nurse all the way up to our house supervisor and security to see if this might be an accommodation we could afford. One of the coolest things about this story is how on board everybody was in the hospital. I didn't receive any resistance. I received questions, potential obstacles, where would we do it, how we would make it private enough where, visitors aren't going to watch somebody expire right in front of them. She would need to be extubated.
Right.
And there could be a smudging, which we've done before, but never in an actual death. We've done smudgings before after death. It was very important to their culture and their community that she potentially be able to take her last breaths outdoors with the smudging ceremony taking place. And so we cleared it with security. The bedside nurse is a friend and an incredible nurse. He's late in his nursing career, and he would be okay with me saying this. He can be a bit of a curmudgeon. He's a self-proclaimed curmudgeon. And he was so on board with doing this. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
He said, well, how are we going to do it? She's hooked up to a vent. Oh, we can just bag her, just have her on a bag and take it out and then extubate outdoors. And so everybody was on board for doing this. And I was like, I can't believe this is going to happen. We had to go down a floor and out to this kind of private, really beautiful garden area that we have in our hospital outside of a different ICU unit. I was kind of on watch to make sure the area was clear. So I went through and made sure there were no kind of looky-loos or visitors or even staff that might not want to see this, and it was pretty easy to do that. It was a cold day, so it was cold outside. The family went outside. They had 3 or 4 community members there who would cleanse the area with the sage burning and the smudging. A tradition, and I'll get to this a little bit later, a tradition I'm not familiar with from my personal background, but like deeply drawn to. Kind of the connection to the earth and the smoke and kind of the cleansing the air. They asked if they could cleanse me with the sage. I said, absolutely. I can use all the cleansing I can take. So we bring her outside. We get ready to do it. They cleanse her body with the sage, and then we move to extubation. And right as she's dying, the sun reflected off of a window from a floor up above us, and Cody like literally illuminated her. She just went like beam. She just was lit up. And then this breeze came through, and she had a comfort care blanket on that we put on people who are going to die. That's a hand sewn kind of quilt. The comfort care blanket kind of blew up like that. And she just died. It was just over. It was last breath. And the family is singing and chanting, and my nurse friend who was right next to me just goes, whoa. He said, I have never seen anything like that. It was just this kind of goosebumpy other experience than I've had watching so many people die in a hospital room. The family was deeply moved by this. They weren't quite ready to share in my joy about the moment. I uninsightfully said, that was a beautiful death. And then one of them cried and screamed, and why did you have to go now? And I said, oh, right. We're not where I am yet.
There's grief. Yeah.
There's grief. Oh, yeah, there's still grief. But also this kind of deeply honoring thing. I didn't know that at the end of the smudging, they also remove all the blankets and continue to cleanse her when she's totally naked in the bed. So that caused me to have to go back inside and make sure it's not apart. I don't know. I'm learning. Went back and make sure nobody's watching this, but it was all fine. And then the niece of this person who died just wept and said, we did everything you asked us to do to the person who had died.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of this story that happened that was just deeply moving to me and inspiring, and it's just stuck with me in many ways.
Yeah. What did you learn from it?
Well, a few things. On a technical level, I learned it's always okay to ask for for things that family are requesting. I
Yeah.
would never, and did not, but I would never make promises that the hospital can't keep, especially in a moment of grief and loss. I don't want to
Yeah.
write a check that can't be cashed. But I learned that the team, and you work in ICUs enough, Cody, to know like teams can be rightfully rigid and controlled about what happens, and they can kind of have that reputation. There can be an intimidation factor. If I ask this, they're going to be like, "Oh, here's this fucking chaplain trying to get stuff done," and that, who is this guy? I have enough clout with that crowd. I wasn't too worried about that. I built good relationships, but that was in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
How are they going to respond to this? It doesn't hurt to ask, even if the answer is no. And in my asking, was very non-assuming, and if this would be a possibility. So that's the technical thing I learned. On a personal level, I'm drawn to nature and in the outdoors. I would say, a emerging mystic. There's just more to this world than I can explain or appreciate. And to encounter a death like that did indeed feel mystical, like whatever is out there welcomed this person into their midst with the light and the breeze. It could have just been a coincidence, but it felt so much more to those of us standing there in that moment. It felt like this deep connection this person, this unique individual had to her world of meaning making.
Right.
That called her, or that she was able to release herself into. I don't know how all that works, but it did feel like she was releasing into something that was also embracing her at the same time. Mm-hmm. So what did I learn from that? I think humility in the face of mystery. That, as I'm sure you've seen, Cody, and have said, no two deaths are alike. Each death is unique. And they can be quite beautiful, often are in their own way, if we're looking for it and opening our mind to it.
Yeah.
I rode a high off of that death for weeks. Just like what we do matters. What we do actually makes a difference. And not just me, but those nurses that were there. The respiratory therapist was there. The attending physician came to pronounce death. That death and grief are absolutely a part of the human experience and a part of that family's experience.
Yeah.
And, the doctor was like, it's a part of their emotional and physical well-being to be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. There were a couple of things that you said that made me think of something. I should have been taking notes. The thought of, I hear people talk a lot, people who aren't dying, people who work in the hospital talk a lot about wanting everybody to have a good death. And I know what they mean. And so often what it is I want them to have the death that I wish that I could have. And I'm putting a lot of my own stuff onto them. But you're right. Every death is different. Everybody gets the death that they get. And they are beautiful in a lot of ways. Even the ones that aren't ideal.
Yeah.
I don't even know what ideal is, because they're all different. So how can we have an ideal one? I don't know. But even when they're traumatic, or when people code at the end of life, or whatever it is, when there's difficult circumstances, they still can be very, very beautiful. It can still be a good death. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times, they wouldn't have maybe not chosen it if they had gotten like a menu to pick from.
Right.
But a lot of times we can get people at least some of what they want at the end of their life given the circumstances, the cards they're dealt, we can help them play them well. And so often, all people need to know is what I think the niece of your patient said, which is, we did everything you asked us to.
Yeah.
And for us, I think it's easy for us to forget that, because we are so focused on the patient. Mm-hmm. But these people that are here with them have to live with this for the rest of their lives. Yeah. And so often they just want to know that they've done right by the patient and that they've done everything they possibly could to get them well, if that's possible. And, sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. And, I think just focusing on what's important to patients' families and patients when they're able.
Yeah, and I think, Cody, something you said really stands out to me. They're dying in a way they wouldn't choose, and what led them to come into the hospital is a situation they didn't choose. So much of the distress I see in the hospital is people who have no more agency, who have no more choices, who have no more options. Everything's been removed.
Right.
And that loss can come in the form of so many things, whether it's a gunshot wound or cancer or small bowel obstruction, whatever it may be. And the death moment can be a time where we exercise some creativity and give the family just even the smallest bit of agency and choice.
Yeah.
Which I think matters more than we know.
Yeah.
It's also a time where I'm really attuned to my own projection and want to do a really careful job of following the family's lead, maybe helping them suss out what a good death means, how very few people think about how they actually want to die.
Yeah.
And that comes in the form of life reviews. Tell me a bit about your uncle. Tell me a bit about your father. Tell me a bit, what things were important to him. Oh, he loved Aerosmith. Well, let's get some Aerosmith going.
Right.
Right. It was a few days after that death, I was in the room, a very different death experience, where when I walked in, it was more of a celebratory sort of thing. This person had been suffering, and they were delighted that there would be no more suffering.
Yeah.
And she wanted somebody to sing Amazing Grace. That's a song I don't love to lead. But, in that moment, I'm like, I think I know the words. Let's get her done. So we did that. And then she said, there was another person in the room. She goes, didn't you two write a jingle together about the importance of drinking milk in the 1980s and win an award for? And he said, well, it wasn't an award, but yeah, we did win at a local radio station a jingle competition. Do you remember it? I think I do. And so he proceeded to sing this jingle about the importance of drinking milk. It was set to like the other day. I saw, so he was able to lead it. And it was like, the hook was, you'll be just fine if you drink from a bovine. And we're laughing and tears are coming down, and we are just in a hospital room with closed windows and very sterile. And there's this moment of kind of triumph. This person's in their, in their meaning making. This person had run the race. This person had done what they needed to do with their life. And this is a moment of relief and celebration.
Yeah. 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 I mean, you're illustrating what you said, which is every death is different and they can all be beautiful in some way. And I think, what you said about giving agency, like there is a limited number of things that you can control in the ICU. And certainly the outcome is not one of them, but, giving people some agency, helping them find what is in their control, and helping them to figure out how they want to play those cards is it's fun, honestly. in a way, it's fun.
It is fun and it's creative, and I'm always shocked that the simplest thing can bring the most meaning. I'm a big believer in a small LED candle. You bring a small LED candle in, and you talk to it, you remember you're loved by it, you think through it. It doesn't have to be some big, not everybody needs to go outdoors. to die, for their death to be meaningful, and how can we make the death moment meaningful, even if it's sad? I mean, even if it's a tragic and awful loss, even if it's a 28-year-old mother of 5 who we've had recently doing handprints and thumbprints with her children and remembering what a wonderful mom she was. You know, we do handprints quite a bit in our hospital, and I love to help children do handprints on their parent. And as we're touching the hands, say, tell me about these hands. What did they do? You know, did these hands feed you? Do these hands spank you? Do these hands guide you and hold you? And yes, it may be incredibly sad, but also richly meaningful as they're coming to understanding about who this was and this life that will not be forgotten.
Yeah. Well, happiness is not the only thing that brings meaning, right? And I think so often we are so focused on trying to get past the sadness that we miss the opportunity for meaning there. But tragedy is very meaningful. Grief is very meaningful, and there's no reason not to experience those things. I think. I don't know.
Absolutely, and I think that's why I feel so honored to get to do what I do with the people that I get to do it with, because I think my belief in that, Cody, and my intense belief in that can kind of transfer into the room of acknowledging the sadness. And I'm often sad. I bring that grief in as well. Yep. But that doesn't mean it doesn't have meaning. That doesn't mean we don't go on. That doesn't mean this person's going to be forgotten. It doesn't mean all of those things.
Right.
It does mean we cry and we mourn, and we feel deeply.
Yep.
And that means that person was deeply loved.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, holy cow, the saddest deaths that I encounter are the people that have nobody.
Yeah.
Or somebody that doesn't really care about them.
Right.
And in some ways, the deaths where people are really grieving and feeling, I'm like, this person was loved. And these people are going to be okay,
Yeah.
It's going to be ultimately okay.
Yeah. The ability for somebody, you or another chaplain or another provider, to sit, to allow sadness or grief or whatever and not run away from it, and not insist that they run away from it or not insist they move past it, it's really powerful, and it doesn't happen
and
all
hard.
that often.
And
it is hard. Yeah.
A lot of practitioners are quite intimidated by that moment, and I think that's another area where we come alongside them.
Yeah.
Oh, it's gonna all be okay. Aren't you glad they're not in pain anymore? Like, what?
No. No, I'm sad they're gone.
Rather than be in pain and be alive,
Oh, yeah. One of the other things that resonated with me is you said you rode the high of that outdoor death for some time afterward, and I told one of the intensive care doctors not long ago, we were doing something, and somebody had died, and we were outside of the room, but the family member was leaving the hospital, and they came by and said thank you and gave me a hug. And I said to the doctor, I was like, it doesn't happen all that often, because a lot of times I'll do my work and then I'll leave and they'll leave and we don't see each other again. Mm-hmm. So if all I need really is for somebody to say thank you once a month, really, that's all it takes. I just need somebody to go, hey, thanks. And I'm like, I'm good. But
yeah, I think that's lovely, Cody. That's just lovely. And I think that the gratitude from the family, it did make me think, I mean, in a genuine way, like what we do matters. Because there can be some weeks where I'm like, and I believe in it, or I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
But to have that validation from the family members, I think makes, it's just nice to get.
Yeah. Okay. Great story. Good job.
Yeah. Thanks, Cody. Thanks for inviting me to share. I really appreciate the work that Dying to Tell You does. I think it's such an important topic and a brave topic. And big kudos to all of your guests that come on.
Seriously.
To risk being intimate and vulnerable and sharing these stories is that's a big deal. And,
it's huge. It's huge.
And it has a lot to do with you, Cody, and who you are in the world. You give, when I listen to you, you're such an excellent listener and practitioner. You are a non-anxious presence who cares. And I think that creates space where people feel free to share, deeply difficult things.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I have to say, I was sitting here listening to you saying all the work that you did, and I was like, God, this guy's better than me at chaplaining. It's too much. It's so much.
I'm older. You clarified I'm a little older than you, so
it's the benefit of experience. Yeah, maybe I'll be this good a year from now. Yeah. So also, you should tell people about your podcast.
Yeah, we have a podcast I do with my colleague named Mike Larson. We're both chaplains. We have a podcast called No Really, I'm Fine. And it more addresses caregivers and caregiving burnout. We have nurses on, doctors on, respiratory therapists came on, 911 operator came on, and just talk about the work that they do, what draws them to it, maybe bring a difficult case or difficult thing, and kind of what keeps them going on. It's been a fascinating project. I would do it if it wasn't a podcast, just to be able to sit and talk to these folks. What we discover is there are literally just as many ways to cope as there are people that need to cope with this work. Yeah. And the unique ways that people cope is just really inspiring. I've gotten a lot of just personal ideas from it, and some deeper themes are emerging that are kind of fun to think through. And so we've just really been enjoying it. So check it out. You don't have to be in healthcare to appreciate it.
No.
Some of our listeners are like, I'm just curious about what it goes through. And, I'm a lawyer who deals with stress, and this is very helpful for me to figure out.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, people need to cope with whatever they're, I don't know anybody that doesn't have stress. So yeah. It's great. And, it's fun and, most of the time lighthearted and, joyful. So, thanks for doing it. And thanks for sharing it. And it's called No Really, I'm Fine. And you have a website, yeah?
We do, yeah. www.noreallyimfine.com.
And
but it's also
anywhere you get your podcast.
Yeah. We haven't broken into the YouTube game yet, the video game. That's our next foray. So I need to have a conversation with you about that at a later time.
Okay, yeah. All right, cool. Well, thank you, Aaron, and listen to his podcast and listen to my podcast and listen to all
Thank you,
all the
Cody.
podcasts.
Man, it's good to see you. Thanks
you too.
Thanks for being a friend for a quarter of a century. That's
man,
that's
jeez,
weird.
It's very weird. All right, love you. Bye.
All right.
Thank you to Aaron for joining me on the podcast and for the work you do for your patients and the medical staff at your hospital. And thank you for being a long-distance friend and colleague. I have fond memories of watching Survivor and Friends together so many years ago in college. You can find Aaron's podcast called No Really, I'm Fine at noreallyimfine.com or on your preferred podcast platform. Remember, you can watch all episodes of Dying to Tell You, The Caring Perspective on YouTube. And please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have more guests coming each week with thoughtful stories of hope and learning at the end of life. Thanks again for listening. This is Dying to Tell You, The Caring Perspective.